Ladies and gentlemen, could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, Republic for one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight will be the zoning subcommittee. I'm going to ask for a roll call of the members. At first, Council McKenna.
Here.
Council Morabito.
Here.
Council Patch.
Here.
Councilor Zambudo.
Here.
And myself, we have a quorum. Also in attendance is Councilor Guanasso, Councilor Keefe, and Councilor Ira Novoselsky. We will start off with the Chara development. Mr. Simeoni, please.
Ashley, is this all? Is that all set? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the zoning subcommittee. My name is Attorney Lawrence Simeoni, and I represent Chara Development, LLC of 30B Railroad Street, Revere, Massachusetts. This evening, I have with me the manager of the LLC, Matthew Philbin. As you know, the project is in the RC1 district, which does not allow commercial uses. And as a result, we're seeking a special permit to modify non-conforming structures that exist on the premises and to alter and modify non-conforming uses. The project site is 327 Revere Beach Boulevard. It has 49,118 square feet, approximately 1.13 acres. There are 3 non-conforming structures at the site. One is a fast food restaurant known as Bianchi's, which has been there since the 1950s, and is a landmark historical restaurant and entrepreneur business on this beachway. Let me say that the other structures are a bar restaurant and a 2-family dwelling. All 3 of these non-conforming structures fail to meet the RC1 district regulation requirements for setbacks and off-street parking. The project is to raise those structures and to reconstruct a new 6-story, 145-unit mixed-use complex with 2,500 square feet of commercial space. This would be to reestablish a brand-new restaurant, hopefully, and keeping the Bianchi name and the Bianchi operator. We've talked to him at length. He is here tonight to join us in this petition, along with his counsel. There'll also be a cafe or retail space as part of that 2,500 square feet. The project, as you'll note in my letter to you of April 2nd, 2018, will meet the floor area ratio of the RC1 district. It will stay below 3, which the proposed project is now at 2.93. What we're proposing here is a streetscape. That streetscape will be in the front of the building. It will consist of the commercial enterprises that I just spoke of. And it's been the recommendation of this administration, along with the planning departments, Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Stringy, the city planner. They are the driving force for the mixed-use development, which we all believe is in the best interest of the city of Revere, as it will make the boulevard a viable recreational area. The project has been thoroughly vetted. There have been several meetings with the St. George. There have been meetings with this honorable council and its subcommittee. And as you look at my letter of April 2nd, 2014 to you, you'll see that I lay out the changes that are made in the proposed building, voluntary conditions taken on by this developer, traffic impact fees and study revenues, as well as the economic impact of the project. The project itself will have 145 units, and that amount of units will be broken up into 79 studio and 1-bedroom units, approximately 55% of the project. 66 units will be 2 bedrooms. There will be no 3 bedrooms as part of our change, as as per my letter to you of this date. There'll be 188 parking spaces with 1.35 spaces per unit. As you look at the letter I've submitted to you, you'll see that there are several changes, and I'm going to briefly go over these changes, and then Mr. Salvo will specifically identify the changes for you on the various site plans and elevations. So as to the changes in the structure that has been made since this honorable body has looked at the project and it has met with the various people that we have over the last several months, one specific change was the prior design had no front setback. The building has been pushed back to create a 7-foot buffer, front yard, if you will, from the boulevard to the actual structure. The new setback will allow for landscaping to be installed in front of the proposed building where none currently exists. The streetscape along Revere Beach Boulevard has a green space. The seating area in the front of the restaurant has been increased so to allow for people to sit down and eat during the summer months. The building's gross floor area will be 2.9 on the floor area ratio count, and this would eliminate any need for relief on the FAR, which we had originally come in for. The 3-bedroom units, counselors and abutters and the like have indicated that they would not appreciate that in this project. The developer, again, has agreed not to have any 3-bedroom units and eliminates the 5 that were there. The elimination of the 3 bedrooms brings the project down to 235 spaces. Relief requested would be approximately 47 spaces and would give this project, on average, 1.35 spaces per unit. Also, Mr. Chairman, since the hearing, the initial hearing of the project, and the 2 immediate abutters, I believe Mr. Parsons, Mr. Parsonses and Mr. Zola, have now determined that they will be in favor of the project, and you'll be hearing from them. The traffic study that is shown and has been supplied to you has identified that the mitigation that will be necessary. It also establishes there'll be minimum impact by the 1,000 trips weekly at the site, daily at the site. To add to the mitigation, we've talked about putting a shuttle bus service along with zip cars as part of the conditions of this special permit. Achara Development has also agreed, in working with Mr. O'Brien of the Office of Strategic Planning and Economic Development, to voluntarily accept certain conditions. These conditions are meant to avoid specific problems of off-street parking and to advance the use of public transportation. These are problems that the city has come upon from the Ocean Ave development and is now addressing it by working with developers like Achara so that the problem doesn't continue. So the proposed voluntary conditions will be that off-street parking will be limited by leasehold agreements with the tenants to the number of off-street parking approved with the project. Prior to leasing, building management will commit to exploring available T-Pass programs for residents without vehicles. The leasehold agreement with tenants shall state, quote, the parking charge will be included in the apartment lease. The project shall provide for bicycle parking in the garage at no additional charge to the tenants, and also will provide convenient access to approved bike sharing programs. The project will provide 2 spaces for short-term car rental programs, zip cars if you will, for the use by tenants who do not have or would not otherwise need personal vehicles. Prior to the issuance of the building permit, the building inspector the City of Revere will receive the sum of $50,000, a contribution by this developer for the waterfront traffic study that has now gone off an RFP and been accepted by the city. So this developer will pay 100% of that traffic study. And that traffic study, I'd say, that traffic study will cover not only the boulevard, but North Shore Road and other areas, and I'm sure Mr. Salvo can speak to that as well. As far as the economic impacts, we've listed them in our letter to you. The economic impacts can go as high as $900,000 in one time for the city building permit. Site plan review, $17,000. Inflow and infiltration, $309,000. Community investment trust fund could be up to $200,000, and we've given the traffic study. We anticipate the current tax revenue received from the site, which is currently below $40,000, to be $428,000 annually. When you look at the site and our project, and we've had some criticism about off-street parking, and when we first came to you, we had 177 spaces. We moved that to 188 spaces. But what I'd like to point out to you, Mr. Chairman, and your members, is that I decided that, and myself and Mr. Salvo did a comparative analysis of off-street parking to give this honorable body an idea of, look at particular buildings and what do they have for off-street parking. You know, we've been accused of asking for 60 spaces of relief. That's not true. It'll be around 40, and it's only because we're in the RC1 district. I should remind this council that the only reason why we're asking for a special permit for the non-conforming uses is because, again, the administration has asked us to do mixed use. So when you look at the St. George, our abutting neighbor, who has 240 units, the per unit ratio at that particular project is 1.11. The Atlantica is 1.60 per unit, and our project is 1.35. Now, the ITE manual establishes for this particular use, transportation manual that looks at trip generations, establishes for an apartment use, and I tell you the true evaluation of this project is by looking at it simply as an apartment use. And that's 1.24. So we meet and exceed the ITE manual standard. If this project were in the, and just to remind the council that in the RC1 district, it's 1.25, I think it's 1.50 for a one-bedroom and 1.75 for a two-bedroom. In the TOD district, which is literally across the street, those ratios come down. It's 1.25 for a single bedroom, it's 1.50 for a two-bedroom. If this site were in the TOD district, we would need 198 spaces. We'd come up 10 spaces short. However, the TOD district does not require, allows by right, I take that back, allows by right tandem parking. So we could make up the spaces by tandem parking. We actually, if this were in the Wonderland Transportation Oriented District, we could comply with the off-street parking requirements. So when you look at the particular sites that we're competing against, we also want to remind you of other things. Like, for example, I told you about the St. George being 1.1 and Atlantica, but recently the Zoning Board of Appeals approved the project on 90 Ocean Avenue, and that project was for 75 units and 75 spaces. And that's not in the TOD district. So we're well within the middle range when it comes to off-street parking relief requested and off-street parking provided. The true look at this site, when one looks at off-street parking, is the city has asked for mixed use. If this honorable body doesn't want mixed use, then don't allow the special permit on the request for non-conforming use alterations. That would give this project maybe 12 parking spaces in addition, which would certainly handle any problems that have been arisen and discussed. But that would be not in the city's best interest. In the city's best interest would be to work with Mr. Bianchi and this developer to keep a legendary building on a legendary boulevard. I'm now going to turn over the matter to Mr. Salvo, who will take you step by step through the various changes, the site plan, the elevations, and if you have any further questions, the only other thing I'd like to point out through you, Mr. Chairman, from the clerk, we have received the November 22nd, 2017 site plan review letter. We find no problems with the conditions. Those conditions would be added to the special permit. And also, we have a couple of pictures of the existing site that would like to show you certain parts of the existing site, if I could, Madam Clerk.
Sure thing, Counselor. If we can briefly go through this, we've got other people that
Yep.
Thank you.
And also, I've submitted for the subcommittee's review, a marketing analysis which shows the demographics and the amounts of rent to be paid. And finally, I'm submitting to you for your consideration letters of support. There are 25 letters of support from the people of the Pines, Revere Street, and so forth. These letters you can review, along with a petition of 74 people who have signed in support of the project.
Mr. Simeoni, just to clarify one thing for the board, and more importantly for people of Revere, as this has been iterated in the past, I'd just like to reiterate it, that none of the spaces will be for lease or for sale or anything of that nature. They're going to be solely for the tenants of that building.
That is correct.
Incorporated within their rent, not like what's happened at other facilities in the city.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Here you are, Madam Clerk. And thank you for your assistance. You're on.
Oops. I'll go quick, I promise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance. Just to...
Can you focus on that, Rick? Thank you.
Is that working okay? Very good, thank you. So this is the existing conditions plan. As Attorney Simeoni noted, and I'm sure many of you are now very familiar with this parcel, it's comprised of 9 tax map parcels. It's made up of 1.13 acres. The locations of the existing buildings are shown outlined in brown. The changes that have been made to the plan since at least this board has last seen it is the building has been shifted back approximately 7 feet. So there's 7 feet of green space now along the front of the building. It allows for some landscaping to be added. And doing that also enables this sort of seating boulevard type area here to be extended to almost as much as 15 feet. So that'll allow to add some outdoor seating and that sort of thing, and sort of engage the front of this property with the sidewalk with the boulevard and the beach as a whole. The building footprint itself has been slightly reduced for a gross floor area of 146,282 square feet, which results in an FAR of 2.98. The building itself, as discussed, is 5 stories of wood frame construction over 2 levels of podium parking, 75 one-bedroom units, 79 one-bedroom units, 66 two-bedroom units. That yields a total of 235 parking spaces required, 188 provided. Just really quick here, access into the site will be via a single curb cut, which exists out there today. We're utilizing an existing curb cut. Folks entering the site will pull into the front here, access a street level of parking, which is comprised of about 83 spaces, single access point. There is an existing grade change on the site, which everyone's aware of. Anyone that's driven around the back of Bianchi's knows that you go downhill to get there. There's about an 8-foot grade change from the boulevard to the rear of the site. This sets up perfectly for us to have a driveway that grades down, and we enter a lower level of parking in this area, which makes up the balance of the 188 parking spaces. Just really quick, in terms of utilities, there's ample water service with the new water main that was installed back in 2008 to provide municipal, domestic, and fire service. There's the existing sewer service that exists in the rear of the property, which we would connect into, provide a grease trap for the restaurant where an exterior grease trap currently doesn't exist, and also the sanitary connection would occur back there. And finally, I know stormwater is a big issue for this area and everywhere along the beach. And we have committed to fully complying with the DEP stormwater regs, in fact, exceeding the DEP stormwater regs in terms of managing all of our stormwater runoff on site. There's two very large subsurface detention infiltration systems, one in the back of the site and one in the front of the site, which have been sized in excess of the 100-year storm, which will mitigate any stormwater runoff that is generated from the site. Lastly, I know Attorney Simeoni commented on traffic. We did have a traffic study done for this particular project, which a project of this size, it's not a real big surprise. The results and the conclusion of that was that it wouldn't have any noticeable impact on the traffic situation that exists. However, we all know that there's a regional problem out there. I myself live at the Atlantica, and I know in the morning there's an endless stream of traffic coming from Point of Pines and that's coming down the boulevard, none of which is generated by the boulevard. To that end, the city has put out an RFP. They've awarded that RFP to Vanessa and Associates, and that's going to study all of the intersections associated with Revere Beach Boulevard, North Shore Road, extends all the way from Elliott Circle to the Point of Pines. That will be sort of the roadmap that will allow the city to be in a position to evaluate what's causing the problems and what the potential fixes would be. Obviously, there's a lot of agencies that need to get together here. DCR controls the boulevard, MassDOT controls North Shore Road, so there's going to have to be some, putting some heads and some resources together. Nonetheless, I think the important piece here is that this project has been the first project that stepped up to try to address the traffic and has offered to fund that regional study. So that's essentially the specifics on the technical aspects. I'm available to answer any questions. Talia Canistra is here from Cube 3 Architects, and she can answer any questions relative to the building itself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any of the members? Joanne? Council McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. DeSalvo, I have a couple of questions for you. So around the building, what is the footage around the building and the property line? Around the green space that you had around?
The dimensions?
The
The
setbacks?
setbacks, very, very good. So the side yard setback is now 10.3. The rear yard setback is 5.8. And that's at the minimum point. So it's about 5 feet, about 6 feet in the back, about 10 feet on the left side, about 7 feet in the front.
So you can get an apparatus around there in case anything happens?
Actually, that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. During the site plan review proceedings, this driveway has been extended so that it'll provide a direct access to the right-of-way in the rear. That was made at the request of the fire department, because the fire department would use that access to get to the back of the St. George or to get to the back of this site. The DPW would also use that access to access with their sewer pump truck, and the electric company uses that as well. So that'll be sufficient to get any emergency vehicles to the rear of not only this building, but the St. George, the Atlantic, all the way down.
Does the St. George have that now?
Yeah, because right now, when you drive behind Yankees, there's sort of just a large connection to that easement, so that's how they get back there now.
Okay, and I have one more question. The water runoff with the storm water, is that going to go into the marsh because you're abutting with the marshland?
No, we're treating, and so the marsh is about 100 feet behind our property, so we're not discharging any water to the marsh. All of the water is being managed on site and discharged to on-site subsurface systems.
Okay, thank you.
No, there's a marsh back there. Yeah.
Council Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions, probably for the Council Simeone. First of all, we've had several meetings over this project. The first, the one that caught my eye is how really nice and beautiful that this building is going to be. And I just wanted to state that we're tearing down what's there now and putting that building in that, on that area, I would think would increase the value of the people living in the St. George or on the boulevard. I also, as far as the parking, I would like to say that the 180 cars, or 180 cars, I don't really have a problem with that. When I read in the Boston Globe that Lynn is going to put over 3,000 apartments on 107, the GE, and also on the Linway, and there's going to be thousands of cars, and where are they going to go? Right down 1A in the beach. And so I really don't have a problem with the number of cars in this project. And I
I'd be
also
remiss,
want,
Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Patch.
Go ahead.
We've only got 7 tandem spaces, too. It's not like we have like 20 tandem spaces. You'll find tandem use replete in some of the developments on Ocean Ave because it's by right. Here, we have to ask your relief.
Right.
And the other thing, as far as the way the building looks, people at the St. George were contributed in the meetings that we had where there were 30 people, talked about color, talked about material choices and so forth. And we expect to keep them in the loop as we go forward.
Right. Thank you, Counselor. I also, as far as me being a Ward 6 counselor, the farthest point away from the ocean, tax revenue is important to me also, and they're, right about now, they're paying $39,000 in taxes. They'll be paying over $400,000 when the building is completed. So we ain't gonna get any tax for the apartments in Lynn or anywhere else. So this, and I also understand the cry out there about apartments, too many apartments, but, you know, I kind of play it one project at a time. I voted against the Shaw's project because I thought it was too big for that area, that particular spot. And I think this, where this project is going, they, by right, if I'm correct me, how high can they go by right if they?
They can go up to 12 stories.
Pardon me?
12 stories.
12 stories.
That
So-
doesn't include the parapet. which
Right,
was
so
another-
I am going to be in favor of this, this project. And I just want to say that because of, it's all the reasons why I was against the Shaw's project. I just think it's the right size for that area. Again, I'm not too concerned about the parking. And I also know that this developer, when he's done other things for Revere, he's done an excellent job straightening out some serious problems in developing a nice hotel. So,
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Patch, thank you for the comment about Matt Philbin and the Philbin family, which has long been people of good character and good results. But more importantly, I'd be remiss to not remind the council that the seventh largest apartment developer in the country, NRP, builds magnificent buildings, and you will be very proud should we gain your success this evening to see a building of not only quality, but something that'll be something that people will come to revere to look at.
thank you, Councilor. That's all I got to say, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Zambudo, then Council Powers. Sorry about that, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like a lot of the changes. I like the 3 bedrooms being reduced to 2 bedrooms. I do like the fact that we're singling out that the parking charge will be included in the lease. As we saw the developer from up the street, when almost 400 units come and tell us that he's selling spaces after the fact. I think this should be the norm for future developments. This should be singled out ahead of time. None of this by chance. The developer comes up here and looks us in the eye a week after we gave him a special permit to put a sign up and tells us how he's found a loophole, and here you go. And I'm still have a bad taste in my mouth over that, and I plan to try to change the zoning so that this is included in all projects in the future. But this developer has chosen to put this in now, which is a plus. But it's been mentioned about the character, and I judge developers on their track record. And I've known the Philbin family a long time. I remember when we had a rooming house on American Legion Highway. It was I'm being kind when I call it a rooming house. There's a lot of other descriptions that could be used. Some of them are very vulgar, and I won't choose to use them tonight. However, that was the first piece that I saw Matt Philbin come in and take this disaster of a property and turn it into a national hotel, a choice hotel. You go there, it's always, the property's always pristine. It's used by a lot of airport people, and the bottom line is that whatever he touches, it's a first-rate property. And like the councilor said, there happens to be some benefits with this. I certainly want to see the landmark of Bianchi's continue. I mean, that's a tradition in Revere, and to see that go away would be a disaster. It's part of Revere Beach. The bottom line is that the other piece of this is that a world-class developer is a partner in this development, and you're going to see a beautiful building. So again, I judge people. There are a few developers that almost get carte blanche from me as long as it's within proportion. I don't think this building is out of proportion from the area. The parking is close to what is going to be a little more than what's next door to it. And as was mentioned, it's a block away from TOD buildings, transit-oriented development, and there would be a lot less requirements for parking with that. Again, I think those of us who have watched traffic studies understand that the traffic is not from our residents. The traffic is regional traffic. It's coming through Revere. And I know how a lot of people feel when they hear about apartments. They go crazy. We don't need any more apartments. Well, that's not true. It's not true. You can say we don't need any more apartments, but that's not being genuine. The fact is there are going to be more apartments. It's picking and choosing what's a good development and what's not a good development. I see this as a good development. I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Council Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be as brief as possible. First of all, with regard to the parking, Councilors McKenna, Ganasso, and Novoselsky, and myself, along with probably a dozen traffic people from DCR and DOT, had a meeting in the State House this past week. And the general consensus was that that's probably the worst bottleneck in the city right now. Traffic coming from Beachmont to get up on Revere Street, traffic coming from the Pines to get to Ocean Ave or to get up to Revere Street, and traffic coming up from Ocean Avenue to get up to Revere Street. And, you know, and the character of the gentleman that's proposing this, great guy, done a couple of great projects in the city. But we're not talking about character tonight. We're talking about zoning. We're talking about zoning that is in place to protect the residents of this city. Are there exceptions? Certainly there are. We had a woman up before the ZBA this past week, and she wanted to put, she has a three-room house, she wanted to put a room on top of her garage for her grandchildren to come and visit her. That's a great thing. You know, Mr. Simeone talks about zip cars, he talks about bicycles, shuttle buses, and all of that. But what he doesn't talk about is during the inclement weather, how these people get out of there, how they get to work. You know, the people that live in the St. George, they have over $100 million invested there. And all they're trying to do is protect the quality of life for them just a little. Now, I'll agree, this is regional traffic, the great part of it, no question about it. But if you have a glass that's almost filled to the top with water, do you pour more water in it? I don't think you do. I think you adhere to the zoning that's in place in this city. I went door to door this past election. I got the message loud and clear. People do not want any more apartments. If you can do it as a matter of right, do it. That was the message I got. And I'm not against people making a dollar. I'm not against people exercising their right to develop a piece of property. But when it affects the quality of life in the area that I represent, I'm against it.
Sure.
State Representative Rosalie Vincent, who lives in the St. George, spent a lot of money to buy a unit in there, as did others. She is 100% against this. And I'd like that noted for the record.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you,
Councilor Janino.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to be repetitive. A lot of my colleagues have stated a lot of great points tonight. But I think something that's important to think about when you look at a proposal that comes before the city is we're not planning the city for the next year or the next 2 years. We're planning the city for the next 10 years, the next 15 years, the next 20 years. And it's really important that we make decisions up here for the zoning for that time period, for the next generations to come, and for the existing generation. And when you look at projects like this, it's important to look at people that are going to make a commitment to the city. They're not people that are fly-by-night developers that come in, build something, and then we never see them again. This is a developer with a track record of building quality projects in the city, with local connections to the city that is invested to the community. This is an example where the developer has come back and forth and listened to what the council said and listened to what the people said. We said we didn't want 3 bedrooms. There are no 3 bedrooms. We said that, you know, you need to work on the parking. We want a setback. We laid the ground for what the council wanted to see and how we envisioned this project. And we worked with the developer to get those things. And the reality of it is this building could go up by right over 12 stories, and there's nothing that the city council could do about it. A little variation in the land setback, and we lose a great restaurant and a legacy in the city of Revere. So it's definitely, you know, a difficult decision. I know that people don't want to see apartments, they don't want to hear about apartments, but the reality of it is we built a residential beach, and we can't take that back now. there are tons of really ugly high-rises up there, and we have the opportunity to build something new and something innovative and something that can add to our community and also has that commercial piece. So think about it, and it's definitely something I support.
Gentlemen, just to let you know for brevity, we're just about 10 minutes before 6. 2 minutes each. Sorry to cut you that long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your, I'll be very quick. I'm not here to knock the project, and I know that the developer is a very good person. The people that are behind this project are very good people. But I did want to talk about just protecting the business side of things. I have a restaurant background, and I'm just curious if anyone from the Bianchi family could come up. Currently, what is the Bianchi family paying for rent at that site right now? Does anyone know?
I believe Attorney Turco is
Well,
here.
I'm just, excuse me, this is the zoning issue?
Correct, and no, I just want to make sure that when we're talking about a project, there's some sort of a false guarantee that Bianchi's would be kept. There's no guarantee, I don't think there's a guarantee. Is there a lease in place?
I'm not aware of a lease. I
So,
haven't even
I'm
got the
just-
project.
Excuse me,
I'm just-
I'm going to
just-
settle this
it's-
right now because I know what your angle is. So let's
My-
cut to the
I'm-
chase. Mr.
Is there a
Philbin, could you come to
guarantee
the
that
podium,
Bianchi's
please?
would be put in there?
Excuse me.
No, it's all right.
Mr. Philbin, could you come to the podium, please?
Yeah, he does.
Just ask
Mr.
my
Turco,
question.
could you come to the podium, please?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, we are committed to working with the Bianchi family and putting that particular restaurant, should they want to, at that location.
Would you kindly answer
another
the
100 years.
councilor's,
Correct.
So I
My
don't
question
think,
is simple.
other
It's
than
very
that,
simple.
Councilor Keefe, and I know
Yeah.
you mean that with all the respect, it's not a wise guy game.
No, God,
You
no.
don't play games. We've worked with you for the last, since you've been in office. My point is that the Philbin family has made a commitment. Jeff Turco is their attorney. He's here today to speak if he gets the opportunity with his client. I spoke to Mr. Bianchi outside. We're excited about having Bianchi's here.
So do you know what the potential going rate for the rent at a market rate on that site would be per month? I'm just curious.
I do not know. I
I
cannot
mean,
answer
I'm going to
that.
guess $7,500 to $10,000 a month, going market rate.
Well, is that the legal seafood rate?
No, that's the,
Because
that's,
you guys
that's
sell
that's
a
not
lot
even
of
the,
fish.
the Boston rate would be about $15,000 to $20,000.
or is that the Ray Nickerson rate?
That'd be about $25,000
Ray
a
Nickerson
month in
rate?
Boston.
I can't answer that question. I'm
Pardon me?
sorry.
Is that the Ray Nickerson rate?
I'm not sure what you're alluding to.
You know exactly what I'm alluding to, sir.
So
So-
I'm just curious if there'd be all I'm saying is, it'd be nice to know there'd be a guaranteed signed lease. That'd be great.
I can say that, I just heard from Mr. Bennett, who's been working with NRP, and I also have, I'm remiss that I didn't identify Attorney Cipolletta, the lawyer for NRP. We're told that we'll probably give them a below-market rate, somewhere around, we don't know.
You're willing to work
We
with
know
them,
what we have to
correct?
do to make sure that Revere has Bianchi's for a long time.
That's great. I'd love to
Because
see it stay.
this has been up here, with all due respect, this has been the issue that we spoke about the past 3 sessions, off and on. And in fact, I know Matt has spoken to several people, including myself, that he was willing to work with the Bianchis, as is what Council Turco said. So I have good faith that they would do that, especially considering the past projects that they've done. So I don't see how this fits into zoning, but if you can tell me how it does, I'd appreciate it.
I just wanted to know if there was a guarantee that the restaurant would be there.
Like I
And
said,
don't
you're
see a
out of
guarantee.
order.
That's all I'm curious, is there's no
You're out of
guarantee.
order. If it fits into zoning, I'd like to know how it does. What does the market rate have to do with zoning, sir? We're here talking about setbacks, we're here talking about parking, we're here talking about the height of a building. We're not talking about the cost of rent.
Mr. Chairman, to put this issue to sleep, I'd like to introduce Jeff Turco.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, would you like me to address this now?
Please.
So directly, Councilor, in response to your question, we do not have a written lease. We've discussed the parameters of a letter of intent, because frankly, my client wants some assurance that they're going to be there as part of the project, and so we appreciate the concern that you've raised. All indications from Mr. Philbin and all of the discussions we have had to date are that they are going to, that we've discussed numerous options. I don't know to the extent my client wants me to get into the details, but I can assure you if they've gone very far in the discussions in terms of how much space we would need, options to expand space for Bianchi's, whether we would have seating inside, or whether it would sort of remain more closely aligned to the type of establishment that currently exists for them. So there is no signed letter of intent now in direct answer to your question, but those discussions have been ongoing, and we hope to have them finalized very soon.
Good, I'm just looking out for the better of Bianchi's as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Counsel Granasso?
And I just, if I may, Mr. Bianchi has a family commitment at 6 o'clock. He needs to leave, so if somebody has a specific question for him, he's happy to answer it. But if not, I'll be here to represent him.
Well done, Chiefs, to go.
Double go. Double do.
Counsel Granasso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. Last week, as Councilor Powers has spoken and said that we did meet in the State House in reference to traffic and other issues that are relating to the Revere Beach projects. Robert O'Brien, Director of the Office of Strategic and Planning and Economic Development for the City of Revere, stated quite adequately. He says, what's happening here, and I've been saying this for years now, regional traffic is really hurting our community in such a fashion that, you know, it's really putting a financial growth process within our city in arms, based because our constituents all feel that no more development within our community is beneficial to our city. That's wrong. We can't control development in Marblehead, Swampscott, Peabody, Danvers. This is the traffic flowing through our community that's creating these problems. Mr. O'Brien stated that. And because of this regional traffic, we can't limit ourselves in growth. We have to grow our community because why? We have several people in our community who retired many years ago and own property. They have to have a tax rate that's somewhat stabilized. And the only way you stabilize a tax rate is new growth. Simple. That's what the biggest part of the budget every year is, new growth. And if we don't grow our community yearly, then we're in a dangerous position financially. How did the city create an $11 million surplus when in our neighboring city of Lynn had to borrow $5 million from the state to survive? Yet we have $11 million in surplus. We've done the right thing for our city. We've done the right thing for our community. We're now in a position to keep that going. Don't drive us back because of the falsehood that you're going to create. I own a property at Atlantica. I should be against this project. I've owned it since 2008. I don't live there, but I own it. It's a great, and I'm down Revere Beach every day. Every day, 3-4 times a day. More so than everybody out here, because I travel Revere Beach. I know the pattern. I took a personal survey in front of the Atlantica, in front of St. George, in front of the Breakers, in front of 500 Revere Beach Boulevard, watching the traffic go in and out in peak times in the morning and peak times during the evening. All the traffic, ladies and gentlemen, is going right by, right by. 99% of the traffic's going right by, one direction, right by. We got to change the traffic flow on Revere Beach, and there's many other things, but Mr. Chairman, thanks for the leadway. I apologize for
Thank you.
indulging.
And that said, I'm going to ask to take a vote on this now. Madam Clerk, if you could enter the record the impacts, the letter submitted by Councilor Simeoni, as well as the site plan review conditions. Is there anything else that I'm missing, ma'am?
The revised plan that was just submitted by Attorney Simeoni as well?
And if we could add that to the record as well?
Yes.
I'd like to take a roll call of the members. Excuse me, I believe that I'm out of order here. I do apologize. We're supposed to do opponents and any proponents? Seeing any proponents?
There would be, for the record, myself, Mr. Turco, on behalf of the Bianchi family, and Mr. Philbin.
Thank you.
There'll be other opponents.
My name is John Shudo. I live in Revere on 299 Salem Street, and I'm in favor of this development. Whatever's going to be built will be better than what's there now. It will bring in more money, tax money for our city. The developer's offering more to the city than I have seen in recent developments. I hear some say build what you can buy right, but what does that get us? An ugly tower and no mitigation? Please be careful what you ask for. Lastly, we need to look at the greater good and not just what a few say. Not the NIMBY people, not the not in my backyard people, and not just other disgruntled developers. I say vote yes and help nice developments like this help our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Angela Sawaya. I'm from the Point of Pines. I wanted to express my support for the project of 322 Revere Beach Boulevard. The beach is a big asset for our city and for our neighborhood. As such, it is important for the city to encourage the right kind of development along the boulevard. At only 6 stories, the proposal is half of what others have built. Further, the 145-unit size is less than what could be built. The proposed building is obviously of high quality, as you can see from the pictures that they had up, and is designed to attract the type of residents that I want in the city of Revere. It's going to be beautiful. In short, I want to have a development that advances the neighborhood and not one that detracts from it. I live in the Pines. I have to go through this traffic every day. And it's not coming from the beach. It's coming from Lynn. It's coming from Swampscott. It's coming from other parts of this, other parts surrounding Revere. I mean, and I live in the Pines, so you know whether I go North Shore Road or Revere Beach Boulevard, it's going to be the same. And there's a lot of people that feel the same way. After reviewing the proposal, I concluded that the development is definitely the ultimate development to enhance the area. I also understand that the development will bring a lot of money to the city. It's almost $1 million in fees. Included in those fees is $250,000 for the Community Investment Trust Fund, which could be earmarked for my ward, Ward 5. In addition, the annual taxes and fees could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, which will be paid to the city of Revere each year. The city should look to revenue sources such as this development for one of the most expensive and high-end projects of the city, and you know me, I'm all into high-end. Finally, but very importantly, I want to compliment the developers. Matt Philbin is an incredible person, highly intelligent, and he knows what he's doing, and he will definitely work with the city people. They are from Revere and have a long history of helping the community out. I realize that most of what you typically hear about developers is the opposite, and the experience, the application for this project and that, but perhaps maybe that's because most developers are not from the city of Revere. These people are, and they have contributed a lot to our city already. To me, the city should approve this proposal. Thank you.
Steve Zola, 332 Revere Beach. I've been coming to Revere for a long time, ever since I was a kid. Ate Bianchi's Pizza, you know, Kelly's, the whole 9 yards. Every time I come here, it just looks better and better. And I just think this is a good piece for that project. And, you know, it just fits. Fits with what everybody's been doing and what you guys have been doing, and I think it's a good project. Thank you.
Any further proponents?
Mr. Chairman, just for edification.
Go ahead.
Mr. Zola is an immediate abutter, one of the only 2 residential immediate abutters.
So he's one of the
As far
abutters,
as
okay.
actual structures other than St. George.
Thank you. Anyone else? Opponents, please. Any opponents? Anybody who is against this project?
Hi, my name is David Hasty from 350 Revere Beach Boulevard. It's just another meeting. We've had so many. It's no point in repeating everything that everyone else has said. And they were all true. They talked about the traffic, the parking, I'm sorry. There's no point in repeating everything that everyone's talked about: traffic, parking, overcrowding, noise, life safety issues, and all that's all true, and we all know it. There's no denying it. Everyone sort of agrees to that. I would like to repeat some of the things that, Councilor Powers, who's a full-time counselor, he's full-time, he works here, he's got his hand on the pulse of everyone in the building. He's been in our building, he knows all the people in the St. George, and he's heard all of us, there's no question about that. So is Representative Rosalie Vincent, who also lives in the building. She deals with the parking and all the problems, the traffic and all that. And they both agreed that this, and they've both gone on record as saying that this is not the best and most responsible development in the area. They both said that, and they've talked to all the residents, and they know what they're talking about. There's no question about that. I think everyone would agree that zoning ordinances are put in place to protect the residents and the quality of life and the standard of living in the city and the community that we live in. This project has been, it's been rejected by the Zoning Board of Appeal. It's been rejected by Councilor Powers. It's been rejected by State Representative Vincent. It's been rejected by an overwhelming number of residents in the surrounding area and by the city residents in general. I think that what I'd like to ask you to do is not to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to all of these people, and instead to turn a favorable eye onto this whole request in favor of a developer who has nothing but dollar signs in his eyes and ka-ching in his ears. I think that you should really not bend to the demands of a greedy and self-interested developer. I really do think that I would like you to, I'm sorry, I'd like you to stand up to this developer and to represent the people that have elected you to do your job here, and to stop granting special permits and to enforce the zoning that was put into effect to protect the residents and the people who live in the city. That's all I have to say, and I really wish you would reconsider what you're talking about here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the City Council. I have spoken also before. There seems to be limited concern by the City Council and also by our Zoning Appeals Board for the timing and sequential growth in condominium
I'm sorry,
apartment.
ma'am. Name and address.
I'm sorry. Deborah Habig-Schneck. I'm a owner of 2 apartments in 350 Revere Beach Boulevard, the St. George. I've spoken before, and I will begin again. There seems to be a limited amount of concern by the City Council, certain members of the Zoning Appeals Board for the timing and sequential growth of condominium and apartment construction that's being built in Revere, and also those areas that are abutting our wetlands. I know there's a conservation meeting that's going to occur on Wednesday. I intend to be there because we do abut the wetlands, and there has to be certain decisions made and material presented to that austere body. The issue several present homeowners raise is the anti-planning that the City Council appears to be agreeing to, specifically the refusal of the Revere Zoning Appeals Board to come to grips with the fact that we have a traffic issue. There are a few people here, Mr. Powers, Mr. Keefe, who have spoken on the issue of traffic. The City Council is elected, they're elected by the residents, and planning for the future is a prerequisite before allowing new construction. The 650 Ocean Avenue apartments, those that are closer to us on Revere Street, they have not increased the value of our units in any way. They're in fact ugly. And this is a meeting for abutters because a notice is required to be sent out. So as far as I know, Point of Pines residents do not abut 320, the proposed building site. The congestion upon entering Revere Beach Boulevard, traveling north, going onto Revere Street, which tonight was a disaster, strangely enough, closed off. They're doing construction on the new area, the new hotel, the new buildings down there. Well, right now, the congestion is getting worse. What happens when the hotel goes up and there's more traffic down on Ocean Ave? That's the only way we can exit to get down into Boston. So we have an RFP that is going to be that's been bid already. I understand we have someone that's going to contribute some money. That's really great. We need to have that RFP put before the city. You need to resolve what, or you need to decide on what can be done, and you need to physically put the changes in before there's any more development, because it's increasing. You can do that. You can stay. Mr. Chara can come back in a year. It's unfortunate. There was a discussion about economic, who was going to be put in this retail or restaurant space. Well, hopefully it will be a good choice if you choose to have this building constructed. I think it's unfortunate that an elected city councilman, Mr. Keefe, was literally cut off when he asked intelligent questions about, I can't believe this is happening in this city council meeting, that someone is literally, they're jumping on them, a city council member. And favoritism towards the people that are supposed to be appearing before you. Apartment rentals have many people, there's a lot of traffic with apartment rentals. One of our biggest issues at the St. George, we have more unit owners who are renting because they can get more money for a rental than for the sale of their units. It's a problem because it's causing damage to our walls or elevators. It's an issue when you have a lot of apartment owners. So all this new building on Ocean Ave is
Ma'am,
creating congestion.
This is not germane to the topic.
So-
you're opposed to the project.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I
And
object to the
I've-
council granting the side variance. It's
Okay.
supposed to be a minimum of 20 feet. 7.5 feet puts us 13 feet closer to the St. George. You've got a minimum requirement of 30 feet. You've got a wetlands, you've got a buffer zone, and you are supposed to make decisions, and I know the Conservation Committee is going to have to look into that. But when there are wetlands, the most restrictive laws in Massachusetts are our Wetlands Protection Act, the most restrictive in the United States. And so we have wetlands right behind us.
How did the St. George get built?
It is grandfathered in before specific acts. Therefore, if it's non-conforming and certain
And this is a
conditions,
non-conforming
if you
project?
have, if the Conservation Committee has enacted the conditions requirements, it may be there for that reason. There are new things that have happened, okay? We've never had a direct hit to hurricane since 1978, so that's a floodplain, and we are all very aware. What happens if we have a direct hit hurricane and the wetlands, which goes down and back, we are flooded out? Yeah, these are important, and we have to consider them as buildings go up. So I do object. And no one at the condo meetings ever agreed and said, oh, we love the beautiful color of the new meeting going up. Never happened. So
Ma'am, I'm just
I
going to give you one
object.
more minute, just...
I object to the
because-
variances that are being requested, and we have no parking that is being given to visitors. We have it at the Revere St. George condo. There's nothing for visitors parking. City Street is congested because there's no parking and not enough for Bianchi's. If you take away the backyard parking, where are the people going to park now who do park in back of Bianchi's if they wish to stop? They're a great organization, but we are limited in our parking and the congestion is getting worse. Thank you very much.
Any other opponents? And I'm going to give the next opponent just 2 minutes, considering the time. I'm going to thank Councilor President Janino for allowing the levity.
Hello, I'm Patricia Lloyd, 350 Revere Beach Boulevard. Revere Beach, about 6 years ago, was designated a public beach. I think with the continued building of private property on the beach, it becomes less and less a public beach. If parking is limited or taken up by people who live on the beach, there will be no parking for residents of Revere or residents visiting people on the beach to park there. I think there's a lot of development going on in the city, and I'm really concerned that we become like a Boca Raton, Florida, that no one can walk down the beach except seeing buildings. And I'm also opposed, if this passes the city council today, because the Zoning Board of Regulations has said this developer asked for 7 variances. They came back with a revised plan. 1 variance was corrected, and to a minimum of like 3-4 feet. And they have still not met the other 6 variances required by the zoning board. So I would ask you to please think again about, I'm sure you have a lot already, again, about how you're influencing the whole city of Revere, and to please consider not only this year and this developer and the amount of income that the city is taking this year alone, and maybe going forward, but perhaps if we wait for a traffic commission report, an EPA report, and other reports that are valid to the building of this building, that we will have something that is more compatible to our citizens and to keeping this America's first public beach, not private beach. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Thomas Mulkern. I live at the St. George. I've been there since 2000. My real concern is this relates to traffic, because traffic can have an enormous effect on the quality of life. I mean, you may not be able to regulate it as you would like, but a lot of the things that you do grant can create more traffic and traffic jams and gridlock and a lot of very upset people. I'm a little surprised at how liberal everybody seems to be about granting variances. You just made a comment to this lady before about the St. George and its creation, and I'm sure that there were grants then that got around the zoning laws. And this gentleman over here, I could see he was extremely upset by, I guess, is it the beach house or whatever down there? You grant them something, and pretty soon it becomes precedent. And it's always referred to, and then, I mean, the number of variances these people are looking for, it's really crazy. I always thought variances, and I go back probably 40 years, but I always thought variances were granted because of a hardship. I didn't know the amount of profit you're going to make qualified as a hardship. So anyway, I'm opposed to it, and I wish you people would think about it some more.
Anybody else? Any opponents?
So my name is John Chrysafkis. I actually live in Maine.
Oh, no, you gotta go, forget this.
Sorry? I live in Maine, but I'm most of the time here in Revere with my friend in 16 Hasey Street. I'd just like to raise the issue of parking again, and no one's mentioned the issue of parking for the park that's next door. My view is very different from some of the others that have mentioned this. People drive past the beach and they see it actually getting more beautiful. That's not what I see every time I go past the beach. I do think you're compromising your beach. Every time I go past, I see a decline, in fact. I can't believe that it's not an offense to you that people are asking for variances in response for a slice of pizza. That's basically what the attorneys asked for. I do think that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I realize that some of you think this is a really beautiful building and that the builder is up for canonization by the Pope, but I see it as a brown box, and next to the St. George, it's actually not a very nice building at all. And as for the standards and variances in the past, whether the St. George or others, I don't think the standard should be, well, there are worse things in the area, and it's better than what's there right now. That's sad if that's the criterion for moving ahead.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'd like to have the members take a vote on this with the site plan review conditions led us to adopt changes within the plan. And again, is there anything else that I'm missing, Madam President, Madam Clerk? Okay, that said, on the membership, to approve the project, Council McKenna.
Yes.
Counsel Marabito? Counsel Patch?
Yes.
Counsel Zambudo?
Yes.
Council President? And myself is yes, it's unanimous. We vote favorably to submit this to the council for further vote. Thank you. Next on the agenda will be the ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Revere relative to billboards. I'm going to take it out of order. That's CZ 1804. No, on the membership, we're talking about CZ 1804, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinances of the City of Revere relative to billboards. I'd like to contemplation on the changing in the HB district, in which we'll be converting static billboards to digital billboards, as well as in the TED. Do we have any commentary from the body before us? Yes, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the City Council. We do have a little proposal that we'd like to present to the City Council. I know this evening you'll be voting on, I believe, a new ordinance in regards to the elimination of billboards. If you'll see in this packet that we'll pass it out, we have a proposal to show you how to reduce billboards rather than just to zone them in a certain area. This will show you how to reduce billboards in your community, and I think that's what I hear from a lot of the members of the City Council and residents in the city. They're more concerned about reduction. And I believe the current ordinance that before you does nothing help you with reducing billboards. Pete McCleary is here, and Pete can, if you'd like, just talk you through a few points. Pete's been in the business for many years. Can show you how taking 3 or 4 billboards that are existing in the city, their contracts, and buying their contracts out, so that way they will remove the billboard and put those contracts into a digital billboard. It works, and I hope that you would give it some thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir?
Sure. I'll try to keep this brief as possible. My name is Peter McCleary. I live at 32 Garrison Street in Boston, Massachusetts. I've been in the outdoor advertising consulting business, project management business for about 31 years, mostly all across the North America, but a lot in Massachusetts and New England. And I just did a brief analysis, a pretty thorough analysis of going through the state sign permits. There's a whole section where you can look up how many billboards are there, what types they are, when they were first permitted, and how long they've been there. And they're not all billboards, but you have about 90 advertising structures here. Some of them are the Deco bus shelters and things like that. 45 of these signs are of the size of about 12 by 25. They're the old, wallpaper type boards that are, it's a dying industry. It's what everybody
Like the ones
wants.
on Broadway.
Everything. These are the signs that everyone's trying to get removed, but they never seem to get removed. Of those 45 signs, 36 signs were constructed between 1930 and 1965. That's 53 to 88 years they've been here. So whatever plan that's been through attrition or whatever it is, it's not being effective because these signs have been here, for an extremely long time, and I assume without some form of incentive, they will be here again for another decades upon decades, because there is no real. They're all grandfathered at the state and local level. You can't do anything to them, and you can't actually repair them as much as you should because you're limited by that by state law.
Excellent. And so right now, sir, the proposal is 3.17, requirements of electronic sign permits. Permits for electronic signs require the prior written approval of the municipality. Basically, we're changing the zoning in order to accord for changes within the HB district, in particular to change static to digital. Is that correct? And the TOD as well?
I believe so, yes. And basically, I know that you guys are a long way down the line, and we've come in at a very late hour here. Basically is that the incentive that you have to give in order to create a program where you can create digital advertising, which has a lot of benefits for the community. Community messaging, fire, safety, police, messages about schools, things of that nature, public events, festivals, and you always have control of that. But there's an economic aspect to it that can be worked out in an impact fee, but you have to incentivize the property owners who have been sitting with these signs that are old and dilapidated for decades and decades. And how you would do that would be to pool them together, and based upon the fact that most of the time they don't even have leases any longer, they just go year to year, and they're very under market value for what they are, because they'll just say, we'll take your sign down if you don't take what we're going to give you. So you find a location in a district that allows for digital billboards, and you get 2 to 4 of these together. You remove them from whenever their lease expires, you sign a legal document with them, and then you put them into the revenue stream of the new billboard. All of a sudden, you have 2 to 4 signs that goes down right away, and all the other economic benefits to them because they get fair rent.
Excellent.
It actually works because these people generally don't want the signs on their property. They don't do anything for their property value, and if they can keep that, we'd increase their income stream, but if they can keep that smaller income stream even and move it to some other location, it does the best of both worlds for everybody. Everybody wins in this situation, is that you have the reduction, you have the new digital boards, and there is one problem, though, is that in the 2 sections that you're proposing putting it, I don't believe with the number of signs that you want to try to get removed, there's enough. The state law is
Only putting one section, right? The TED district, the only district?
no, there's 2. There's a technology, and there's a...
Is there 2 districts?
Well, Ted,
Yes.
Digital billboards?
that's it. Correct.
Okay. Okay, well, I thought that I was wrong, because I thought it was in 2. With that, there's the 1,000-foot radius requirement between digital signs. And there are a lot of other regulations that really effectuate whether you be able to put them there or not. I don't believe that without creating some area of the general business district, that there would be enough space that's legally viable at a state, federal, and local level for you to get the signs out that you want out and put the signs in that you want in. So my suggestion as a consultant would be that you look in case-by-case basis on a general business district and allow great input from the neighbors if there are homes and things like that, because the state is very stringent upon how the area has to be. And I've listed some of the laws that are in here. They're all congruent with what you're trying to do. The state's already covered that also.
So we've got a 7-page document that we're going to probably implement tonight regarding your input as well as that of Frank Stringy's and other people that are making the ordinance change in order to amend Title 15 and Title 17 of our ordinances regarding this particular
Can I ask
issue.
a question, Mr. Chairman?
You go right ahead.
Is there a way that we can offer an amendment to that ordinance by allowing the business district to be part of that district? That basically what we're asking.
I'm not sure if we'd have to have another public hearing on it, and I'd rather probably speak to Frank Stringy on it, but I believe we'd have to have another public hearing on that, because it's an amending.
I don't believe so, but per parliamentary procedure, I don't think you need to have another.
You might be right.
Yeah. Right.
But I'd still like to put it
But
past
that's fine,
our
that's
city
fine.
planner.
Right? So you'd pass this tonight, and we'd have an opportunity.
Of course you would. Of course you would.
Because what we presented, I think, is what, I think, even if, I know the members of
There's
the
a little bit of confusion, I think,
beautification-
as far as the general business district and the TED
Well, general
district.
business is Squire Road.
Correct.
I mean, the goal here is to take billboards down off of buildings in Broadway of Revere.
Correct.
The ones that you see that are dilapidating.
Correct.
What this proposal does is takes 2 to 4 billboards out of the city. You expand the district, allow digital billboards. That will help. And then, but also, those people that have those billboards have an incentive to get rid of their billboards because they become part of the
issue
profit
is
sharing in
that,
a
so
digital billboard.
the issue,
I know it's getting, I
yeah,
understand.
it's partly that. The other part of the issue is that the GB district is also down Broadway. It's also part of down Central Avenue. It's part of Revere Street. So technically, there are different areas that have GB within the area. I even believe there's a GB down a small portion in Beachmont, if I'm not mistaken. So we would have to really reflect on the zoning. And Councilor Janino, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that there were some members of the beautification committee that wanted to be present tonight. I don't know if they was posted online, but there might have been a little lack in communication between our body and their organization. So perhaps we could keep this in committee, invite Frank Stringy and Paul Capizzi to come before
Correct.
us.
And, personally, I have to concur with you. Squire Road is not a place where you would not want to have something of a billboard. It's Route 60, it incurs over 200,000 trip traffics a day, whereas Broadway is, a different venue all in itself, but that's just my opinion. I'm one person. What I'd like to do is put this back in committee, ask for Frank Stringy to come up, wait for the people from the beautification committee come up. Sir, if you'd like to speak, please come on up. I do need to shut this down because we're running very, very late, and I want to thank Madam President for the leeway here. Go ahead, sir.
Well, forgive us, the beautification committee, for some reason we didn't get notified properly, but it's nobody's fault. I'm a little bit confused. Are we sticking to tonight we are going to be sticking with the proposal, the ordinance that Paul Capizzi and Frank Stringy worked on?
Well, that's true too, but I also have some belief that Squire Road is a business district.
It is. It's GB.
And it should be designated different because I believe that when you do say GB, we have Broadway, so that should be rezoned, I think.
Well, just to let you know, Frank Stringy and I and Carol Haney went all over the city. We went business district, TED's, every zone, and there was
Right, but you
tremendous amount of input, just to finish out. There was tremendous amount of input from the city dealing with this issue. And so I'm very concerned if we're
But
going
you
to be
will say that
moving away.
Broadway is different than Squire Road.
Yes.
And the same thing with Shirley Avenue.
Yes, sir, I'm
So
going
my
right
thought
up.
is we probably have to rezone those areas.
You'd have to, right, but I
And
think
that's
that,
my thought.
to start to rezone specific spot zonings for specific people in this city, I don't think that's proper, or specific sections of the city.
Well, I think Broadway was spot zoned to be general
Yeah,
business.
I mean, at one
so
time, but I
that's
think
what- that's
a
the
lot
point,
of
but
thought needs to go into
let's-
this,
Let's wrap this up. We're going to end the zoning subcommittee. Quickly, please.
Is Broadway GB1? Because I think I'm different. Squire, when I looked at your zoning map, Squire Road was.
We're gonna fix this in the next,
Okay. All
we'll
right,
deal with
thank
that
you.
then. So this will concur the. Thank you very much. The zoning subcommittee, and we're going to put this back in committee. Correct. What's the next item? The next item up will be 404 Revere Beach Parkway. I guess we got one more to go. This is going to be a long day. We're going to speak about CZ 1803, Title 17 of the revised ordinance. Shall we, could you read this?
These people have been waiting, that's from Abraham.
Go ahead. Council Cipolletta?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Briefly.
James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway, Revere, on behalf of Ibrahim El-Wahani.
Jimmy, you're going to have to speak up louder for my mic face so that they can hear you.
So this is an application by the owner of the property at that now houses USA Motors. As I had indicated to the council at the public hearing, this is a lot that was bought by Mr. El-Wahani about 15 years ago. It had been a gas station that had been fallow and abandoned, had been contaminated. He bought it, fixed it up, cleaned it up, and is operating a successful business out of it. It is in the RB zone, Residence B, and this is a situation that has never been residential, will never be residential, and it is very close to the TED district. The TED district and larger districts than the RB district, or I should say more commercial and appropriate, surround his property. He is the second lot from the boundary of the TED district. He is on the east side of Pratt Place. His neighbor is on the west side. It is Ibrahim's application. The owner of the neighboring property was here at the public hearing. His daughter was here as well. And they are assenting to move their property into the TED district as well, and they are in favor of extending the TED zone by 2 lots. It's a more appropriate use of the lot. It's on Revere Beach Parkway and surrounded by businesses. So Ibrahim is here. If you have questions of him, if you have questions regarding the zoning or the proposed plan, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Council Cipolletta. Opponents? Proponents?
Move to approve.
Well, we have to take proponents and opponents first. Proponents? Okay. I believe he would like to speak. Opponents, please.
Good evening. My name is David Porvu. I own the Pratt Place Apartments, which abut this property. Excuse me.
Your address, sir?
Well, my business address is 154 Wells Avenue in Newton.
Okay, thank you.
We've been down a similar road before with this property. It would seem that in many ways this is a disingenuous application because they're already selling vehicles out of the property. My understanding is that they want to sell vehicles. That's the thing. And just today, at 3:30, they have cars out front marked for sale. That aside, there's residential property on 2 sides of it and across the street. So to say that this is a business zone because there's a non-residential property on one side is not accurate. Currently...
This is on Route 145, correct?
Yes.
The highway.
Well, I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay. They often overflow onto Pratt Place, which is a private way. This is a change in zoning that will not just change the current use, but expand its use into a residential area. The rear of the site is poorly maintained, as the records with the Board of Health will show that we've numerous times had to request that they clean up the lot. We received no notification of any of these hearings, which as far as I'm aware, abutters are supposed to be notified of these kinds of things. That may be. I don't see that this is any benefit to the neighbors. And I'd like to just leave you with the photographs of the cars for sale.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Name and address, please.
Rita Tanzella, 16 Pratt Place. And where I live, there are 72 apartments, and they do abut his property. Now, yesterday, at approximately 1:15 p.m., I was leaving the premises, going to pull out onto Revere Beach Parkway, or 145. A gray truck came off of the parkway, cut right in front of me to go in to the garage in question. I was so angry. I had to stop short, and I watched. The truck just sat there. I don't know why. Maybe he was looking around to see which car he wanted to go look at, because there are cars there for sale. And most weekends, people do come down when the place is closed, and they look around. I've heard them, I've seen them. They look for a car that's not locked, get in it, pop the hood, look under it, get under the car, whatnot. It is a very, very dangerous, I don't even want to call it an intersection, but a way to get in. People going into his place do not know that Pratt Place is a street. They just go for it. And he has cars delivered, not so much now, by carrier, at all hours of the night. It has subsided a little, but it's still there. It is very, very annoying being, woken. And then when they pull in, your whole bedroom or apartment is lit up with the lights. And now that summer's coming, it's going to be a public restroom. I asked other tenants to come. They refused to come. They've had bad experiences and just didn't want to be here. So I can't say much more. And your favorite word is traffic. Come and see the traffic down there. And it's going to increase with Suffolk Downs being developed. And I think that would be the biggest development in the city. So as far as traffic goes, what do I say about traffic? You have the hotel there too right now. Be opening up pretty soon. You just can't get through there.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other opponents? That said, that part of the meeting is closed. Any motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Roll call. Counsel McKenna?
Yes.
Counsel Marbido? Yes. Counsel Patch?
Yes.
Counsel Zambudo?
Yes.
Counsel President Tenino? And myself as a yes. That said, this will concur the zoning subcommittee meeting, finally. Thank you.